last virtue is fidelity, which is correspondent with spleen. Fidelity is also can be meaning as honor and trust. So faithful, there's lots of words linked with, because in Chinese the xin is quite large meaning. So that's why in the with the spleen, there's the emotion and consciousness as linked with the yi. Yi means your mind. So interestingly, people say the highest yi can link with the spleen because you're thinking. That's why the Chinese medicine said overthinking harm the spleen. You can see most of the intellectual people have weak spleen. Bad news. So the virtue of their fidelity actually is based on you got to be truthful and then trustworthy. So it's because spleen have the character. Can you imagine? We always said stomach and spleen in Chinese medicine as the pair. So when you eat food, for lots of people eat everything. Meat and pork, and vegetables, eggs, and fruit. It's almost pump everything into the stomach and spleen. So that's why, can you imagine? It's just like Earth. The Earth, you can pump up so much things on the Earth. You put your garbage and the rubbish, and you put the seeds, you put everything, and then rotting on the trees and everything. So they just very trust, hold, and concerned. So that's why the fidelity have that kind of a quality as virtue. So you are accept so much things, but you will be able to transform, just like you take food and then you can transform into nutrition to the other organs, to nourishing the others. So that's why they have beautiful kind of a character. So that's why we were always say that, if in the I Jing, so the earth actually on the the spin and on the I Jing as a yinyang shape as a cosmos spin, because they're doing the mathematics distribution called Yellow River map. So right on the middle is the earth.
Yeah, so there's a spinning map, and in the middle is the earth.
It's the earth. So that's why you can see our spleen is on the earth, on the middle, or stomach and the spleen. The function of digestion, put this way, is on the middle. So that's why on the cosmos also the management and doing everything to transform the other movement is start from middle flow. So that's why this part contained very, very powerful energy to nourishing the rest of it, either physically or energetically, and the information. So because they gave in the birth, so that's one of the reasons when we see as the human, if you want to be stand up in the society, because life is bumping, you have sometimes happy time and sometimes unhappy time. Sometimes you go very smoothly, sometimes you have disaster and all of the troubles. But how can you stand up in that kind of bumping journey in the human? Because I'm sure nobody human said, everything just nice. It doesn't work like this. The life is always, I have a challenge. So the sense to make sure you're standing on your life without fall down is the true trust to make your stand up. For example, and you're dealing with the people you promised and you delivered, and then when you delivered, then the people will come back, said, okay, brilliant, you tell me that, I put kind of a hope on that, you delivered and then accomplished, and then people will come back, and then you deliver more, people come back, because that's a trust. And then you established yourself, because people say, wow, this man really delivered what I had promised, exactly what they delivered. So that's why in the life, in the societies, people say, oh, you get business and you established. But if you said, oh, I want to do that, you tell people, but next time you say, oh no, I'm not, I'm changing. People say, that person not reliable. Okay, better not invest any energy to it, because they will be not fulfilled. So that's why that's part of the trust getting. But of course, the trust also including about your trust and the nature and then the essence flow on we call the heaven. Because people were discussed that, oh, you got to trust yourself. Actually, I feel like, yes, you got to self-trust, but also you're the someone in between many things, among many things. You have a heaven, you have earth, you have people around, you have lots of ecosystem around, food, transport. So the fundamental trust is you need to trust the Tao and the heaven constantly nourishing you. They won't bound you unless you don't trust them. That's why lots of people don't trust them. So they have a forest they don't trust, and they have to find some other clever way to build up the artificial sense to replace it. So therefore, humans so much clever, and then they are neglected that kind of a trust. So therefore, I was try to say that there's some of the trust runs deeply within you to trust the highest, the Tao, and the highest we call the either divine and the spirit, whatever. So divine nature. But people very fearful to want to mention that. I just said, how can? Because cosmos is such big. We're tiny. But if you don't trust, how can you be living this life with the full of energy? Because cosmos formulated by the energy. Yeah. But people just don't really trust that, oh, everything's we made. So you can see why human has been destroyed in nature, because they don't trust there's another big world among us. So it's very, very narrow-minded and very, very self-centered, very, very kind of on that. So that's partly, we always said, when you have this trust and sincere trust, and like lots of people have difficult, they pray. Pray who? In the Chinese history, I just give you an example. Their emperor, he self-checking. He said his virtue not good enough because there's too much enjoying himself. So that's why the whole country no rain, completely drought. And then so he started self-checking and said, I'm wrong. I will pray for the heaven, for the God, and I'm fasting. And so he fasting for 7 days, and then on knee in the courtyard towards to the heaven. Guess what? Start rain. Well, the scientists, maybe just by accident, but to the ancient Chinese, that was in the documents in the Chinese history, said human beings so small, they're just like a frog in the well, in the well. They think the heaven only that small, but because there was so much into a narrow space. But if you start opening up, there's so much other things which we need to trust their existing and operate. Otherwise, and then that's why the self-centered actually did, destroyed our own self. So that's partly we were said, if you understand that, and then you base on trust your deep, your heart, and then your inner guidance, which is rather than running by the mind, by the knowledge, and then you sincerely doing whatever you promise, so you build up harmonious relationship with the others. So that is the one of the good practice to change your fate. So that's one of the reasons lots of people said, whatever happening, don't lose the trust. If you lose the trust, you basically fundamentally like you're floating away.
You've lost your center.
You lost your center because the trust is in the center. So, for example, we were said, trust have another aspect because we said your function on the trust, you get credit. So the credit actually means when you had a trust, you build a good relationship, people will be almost like more want doing things to relate with you, and then they want to share the resource with you because they trust you were doing the good things, and then they were happy to give you something else to let you make, because people naturally very giving. They want to find someone not kind of a waste of the resource about what they accumulate, but they want to do something good. So that's why, and that trust is also is type of sense looks very kind of non-real. It's just like almost like a feeling. But on the other hand, the trust have a practical aspect, just like a credit card, because they mobilize the energy flow. So it's like if you build up the system with the trust, so it's like a credit card. They're just plastic, little plastic cards, but they can mobilize the financial, some of the goods people can exchange just with that kind of plastic card. So that's why this in the information floating with fundamental trust. So that's why they build up the society as in that kind of a base. So that's one of the reasons we always said, if your spleen is stronger, you have that fundamental trust, you do good work. So that's why you don't feel you neglect anything. So that's why we said you're centered. So of course you have much better digestion because you're not worried. Am I doing wrong? I'm doing wrong. Am I advised? So you're not debate and fight inside the self, because it's self-centered. So, okay, I choose that. I stay there. I experience, and now I trust. We will see. So it's like 1,000-mile start from first steps. So you learn that, you work through that. So therefore, you make sure you follow the heart. You're not doing anything harm, and then your mind peaceful. When your mind peaceful, your spleen is stronger. Because that's why lots of people spleen not strong. They're thinking 1,000 things, and later on they feel muscles weak and then terrible. They cannot digest food. When they have emotion turbulence, people always find they cannot eat properly. They cannot digest. So that is also reflect on the spleen function. So understand that. So stay on the virtue actually strengthen your spleen. So when the spleen is stronger, your body have much more energy, distribute much more nutrition to your muscle, so you can acting much better. When you're acting better, you deliver the result. So you're gaining more trust. So that's why it become a positive circles. So that is very powerful, deep, the cycles above the virtue. That's a 5 one. Each one all fulfill their energy, and ended up they are nourished back to the De and the virtue one. And then they will be able to return to the Tao. But if each one is leaking, so ended up just like your body, it's like your body leaking here, leaking there, so you cannot actually ended up as the full in the yang, the full and oneness. So we are need to trust that's the design on the cosmos, on the earth, and even on the body. We have that the internal medicine in ourselves, which is those 5 virtue is part of the medicine. And also the qi, we will practice qi energy, and also is the earth ground manifested part to nourishing the virtue, and then the virtue return back to the Tao. So that's why, and to be able to understand the harmonious and the flow, and then to operate that, and make sure stay the centered. So that will be much contribute had a good health. And then, for example, like we call the spleen. If it follow the I Jing, there's the numbers of the 10 and the 5. So that's why we always say the 5 flavor, because 5 elements, 5 flavor, and then also talking about the 10 remedies as 10 flavors to nourish the whole body. So those are all reflect the universal design. So when we fit in that, you may find, oh yes, I feel much better. So that's part of the I feel like a little bit more challenge to lots of people get used to, like in the modern society, say, oh, you got to have the independent thinking. You shouldn't trust easily, otherwise you're lost. And they didn't know the wisdom is based on the trust. You're letting go a lot of human mind, and then the true natures that come out. Actually, you become more healthy, more smart. But that's why people lost their De, lost their virtue easily, because there's too much information, too much different kind of how to say, attractions or temptations.
It's a paradox too, isn't it? Because once your spleen is stronger, your third chakra is stronger, so you're more comfortable in yourself anyway. So even though you're trusting more and you may be open more to influence, you end up knowing yourself more anyway.
Yes, exactly. So that's why sometimes to start with nourishing the body and then much better. But the interesting, that's both way. I used to running the course as people said, okay, give lots of food, but they're still thinking too much. So and then we just said, okay, stop thinking and then doing something else. Suddenly said, hey, I don't really feel hungry, but I'm full of energy. So you can see why the emotion is so important, because the emotion, your attitude, straightforward attacked your organs. So why lots of people eating so much food, doing so much, but they still feel tired, because their attitude didn't change. So that's one of the reasons I find the 5 virtue is very, very powerful here, is because it's the wisdom to tell yourself, because that's why they said that those need to be educated. You need to understand why ancient people can be emerging with yin and yang and beyond space and time. Because of course lots of people say, oh, I don't believe because I haven't seen it. But there's also some of the deeply we need to open our mind, open our heart. And then because that's what I said, the frogs, and then so they just denial. So why not you just letting go all of the judgment? Just try to see how does that come out. That's what I did. When I was very young, I was trained as Western medicine. In a teenage, I went to the hospital. So I was reading so much book. I started realize maybe I'm naturally born as a researcher. So if I know something else, I would get every book as possible to find out what's happening. But I suddenly get into the Qigong and find, there's so much magic happening. I was basically watching the master can lift up the human body and can conducting the skin by just calling the lung meridians, the whole pores and the skin open and close like windows. It was so fascinating. I said, how can you do that? I said, just practice. And I started realizing, it's nothing to do with knowing much. When you're knowing too much, it doesn't work. It's about how to be dropped, letting go, and then start trust the ancient practice, and then just follow the practice. So therefore, I just dropped all of my writing, all of my book, and start practice. And then now I start realize, what is said is the truth. It's because the start practice, I deeply can see there's many phenomena, many things what they have been mentioned. It manifests with my body. But of course, very difficult to tell people what it's like. But I was always said, very important, you got to practice yourself. If you don't practice, you're always standing outside to try to say, judging, it doesn't work. So, okay, I hope that will make the sense for 5 virtues. But the most important things I want to say, through the body energy practice, can accumulate a strong energy to be able to reach, to experience the virtue. It's the base to lead to touch what virtue feels. Or you start to understand how that virtue, you deeply in line, embedding with you, and then through your mental information, you start to do it with that principle, and now also to see how the body changed, so that both way works.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.